Nertz burgers. Hi everybody, welcome to StashBlaster Quilts. My name is Maria, and welcome, please, to the channel. Um, I am a professional organizer by trade, so I usually start with a tip. So if this is your first time here, welcome. And our tip for this week is about project planning, but it's more along the lines of don't trust your memory. A lot of people, especially when they're young, keep 8 million thoughts in their head at any given time, and they get used to doing that. But as we age, that doesn't work. And it's not because there's a problem with our brains. The problem is that we have a lot more years of stuff that we've crammed into this mental closet. So if you think about it that way, sometimes it's hard to find just the right thing to pull out. So what I recommend is that you write it down, whatever it is. So, for example, when Scott got his diagnosis, the first thing I did is I set up a notebook. It's a binder. There's a page where I've listed all of his medications in the morning and the evening. And although this drives him completely insane, he hates to do this, but he does this because he knows that I'm right. After all, I'm always right. When he takes his medications out of the bottles and things like that, he puts a check mark. Because particularly with cancer, but with anything, it's easy to forget. Did I take it? Did I not take it? When did I take it? There's also a tab for symptoms, questions for the doctor, anything that has arisen, all the appointments that we've had, and then the ones that are scheduled. And the idea is that I don't have to wonder when we go to the next doctor for the next kind of test. They'll say, well, when was this diagnosed? And when did you have this other test done? It's all right there. It's all written down and ready to go. So whenever you have a project, particularly a big one, but anything that's really detailed, don't trust your memory because it will bite you every time. Make sure that you write it down in a way that you can access it easily. And then, you know what? If I don't need a couple of the tabs that I put in there, good. But if I do, they're there. So, for example, when I'm in London, if Scott isn't feeling well and our son needs to come in and help, he'll be able to go to the binder and see what medications Scott's supposed to have. Because it's actually going to be only 10 days after his next chemo treatment that I'll be in the air on my way to London. So he's not going to be 100%. So this way, I know that he's going to get the right medications at the right time. My son doesn't have to wonder, is he giving the right things? Did Scott tell him everything he was supposed to take? It's all written down. So it's the same thing with your projects. When you have a big complicated project and you have, well, for example, I'm doing the grandmother's flower garden with the white path around each flower. I know how many flowers I need, which is 289. I know how many white hexagons I need for the path and the outside border and everything else. But I wrote it down because if I didn't, every time I was trying to know if I had enough pieces, I would have to go and recalculate everything. Same idea. Also, where am I in the process tells me kind of how much more time to anticipate it taking. Let's say that I know that I've logged 40 hours on a quilt, which is not uncommon for me, okay? A lot of my quilts take hundreds of hours, because when they're hand-pieced in particular. So if I've spent 40 and I know I've only gotten this far, then I know how much longer to anticipate the rest of it's going to take me. And I can decide to work on it at this given time or not, depending on what's going on. So the more notes you take and the more you write stuff down, the better. Judy is sewing her paper-pieced quilt. Good for you, Judy. I saw some stuff on this. I believe this is one of the things that she showed me earlier. So anyway, so that's the tip for this week. I have not gotten a lot of progress, I'll be honest with you. I have been making a lot of white hexagons. I had all of the flower fabric done because I'm only using hexagons that I've already made. So I've made 2 quilts so far, and I have 2 more to go. So if I do this, hold on. I don't know if you'll be able to see it here. Nope. Let's go back here. Let's go to this camera. And then I'm going to do... It's upside down. But you can see the flowers there. The top section is stacks of 5, and then the 3 at the bottom are just kind of loosey-goosey. Those are the flowers that I've got made out of my 289. But all of those hexagons came out of a bin of pre-made hexes. So that's project 3. Project 4 is going to be a charm quilt with all of the remaining hexes that I only have 1 left of. So I am sewing my flowers together in 3 pairs for the outer flowers. And then if there's a fabric I have 2 of, then 1 is going to go in the charm quilt and 1 will be the center of a flower in the grandmother's flower garden. So I'm trying to be as efficient as possible, but I didn't have nearly enough white hexes because I need over 1,600. So, because this is going to be a king-size bed with a 10-inch drop, etc., because I have that many flowers worth of hexes made. So that's I've been making a lot of those hexes because on my London trip, rather than taking a whole bunch of different threads so that I can work on the hexes, and yeah, I know you don't need to take different colored threads, but I'm going to, I do, just because I'm using up all my scrap threads. What I'm going to do is I'm going to tape the 5 whites that go together for each flower. Let me rephrase. Every flower is going to have an arc of 5 white hexes sewn onto it, because when you put the flowers together, it will make the pathway. Okay? So then that way I'll just be putting flower next to flower next to flower, and by putting those 5 in the way that I will, it will make all the connections that I needed to make. So I'm going to tape them together in the arcs, and then I'm only going to take the white with me to London. So I'll be able to just go ahead and pack up a small container with white thread ends and just do the whites and put those together. But I have about 40 different white on whites as well as some plains. So what I'm going to do is Tuesday at our quilt camp. Oh, I'm so looking forward to next week. In February, on Valentine's Day week, we have quilt camp Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So it's 3 solid days of being with my Springfield buddies sewing. And there's going to be several classes that I'm going to get to take, and there's going to be some just plain sewing time. Well, on Tuesday, if you bring your machine, you have to take it home that night. And I don't want to. So on Tuesday, I'm going to be doing handwork. But one of the things that I'm going to be doing is taking all of these different hexes and trying to lay them out in a way that there's not a lot of repetition amongst all of these flowers, so that I don't get, it doesn't start to look artificial or like I did it without forethought, because I wouldn't want, you know, fabric A, fabric A, fabric A, fabric A, and then fabric A, and then all of a sudden a B, and then, oh, I've only got a few pieces of C, and, you know, so I want to scatter all of them all around. And some of them are not exactly white on white. They're like a white on a cream. They're close enough. But I want to splatter everything about. So I'm going to be laying out 289 piles and then trying to put the groups together in ways that will spread out all the color and the different patterns and things like that. And so I'd never have 2 of the same one in the same arc. Now, I'm going to not actually put the flowers together until they're all done. So when I lay out the final quilt, there might be some that are similar that are near each other, but that'll be fine. I just want to make sure I have the best opportunity. So on Tuesday, that's one of those things that I'll be doing. So I have a container that's about this wide and about that long and then about this tall, packed as full as I could with these white hexies that I've been basting lately. So there's that. I've been doing that, but also been driving around a lot, doctor's appointments, things like that. So I have not really gotten very far, and I haven't completed any more of these. I did sew some of my little pairs of hexies together at Springfield earlier today, so that felt kind of good. But that's going to wait for a little bit before they're all assembled, so that's what we're doing with that. Pat said, oops, I used an Excel spreadsheet for Mark's pills for hip surgery. It's good. Yes. It's always going to be organized. Don't get me wrong. So my sewing room is driving me completely bonkers right now. I had shelving over here. This camera is kind of weird. I had shelving over here on the wall, and it was collapsing. It was coming off the wall. And in my closet, I only had 6-inch deep shelves. So I just had a handyman in this last week. They didn't really like it very much because they had to wear masks the whole time, but that's their problem. And so he put in new shelving and everything, but that meant everything that was in the closet and was on the shelves got dragged out into the middle of the room. So it is completely packed on the side of the room opposite you. I can't get to any of my little drawer units or anything like that. So when I look past where the camera and the screen is, all I see is chaos. So yeah, it's like nails on a chalkboard. But that's okay. It'll get there. But in general, yes, being organized is super important. But if there's one thing to make sure you're organized on, it's medication. Taking medication improperly causes a lot of problems. And so if there's going to be one thing that you focus on to make sure you have organized, that's what it should be. I don't care about your spoons, to be honest with you. If they're not organized, nobody but you cares. But when it comes to medications, it's super important that those be taken care of. So, Pat, I'm glad that you did that, and hopefully everybody will. But anyway, so what I was working on earlier today, what you probably heard me doing while you were waiting, is I was doing some coloring because our 2024 group quilt, I have the first block ready for. Honestly, I admit it, I'm starting easy. I am behind in trying to get some stuff done, so I picked the easiest one to get started with. It's called Susie's Choice, and it looks like this. Okay? Now, I'm working on the instructions now. They're not done, but we have the light yellow and the medium yellow, okay, and then our background blue. So my background blue is mostly going to be this color, which I really love. Of course, I love batiks anyway. And then I have 2 prints for the yellows I'm going to be using today. It is completely up to you whether you mix and match batiks and other fabrics. I personally mix everything. So just so you know, when you look at my stuff, don't be surprised when you see prints over here. But I thought I would walk through some of the stuff that we're going to be doing. It's a very simple design. It's very simple. So basically, we have, in the center, we have 4 half square triangles with the light and the medium yellow. And then we have 4 flying geese with the light on the one side and the dark on the other. Because they're not opposite, but because we have 2 different point colors, I have chosen personally to do my flying geese with the rectangle and square method. You could certainly do it, the 5 squares, but it gets tricky. And I'm not up to that right now, to be honest with you. So I said, you know what? I'm going to keep it simple for myself, Keep it simple for you. If you looked at the fabric requirements, I did warn you that I haven't tested it yet. My original plan was to do one quilt in advance and check all the fabric requirements, and then and just use like the minimum number of fabrics possible, and then to do it again with you, making it scrappier. But given everything that's been going on, it's just going to be the one. Honestly, that's all I'm going to be able to do. So I thought I would start sewing it with you today, and then this block, and then I will get the instructions up. I'm hoping in the next couple of days, and then I will finish the assembly of this block with you in 2 weeks during our regular live stream, and then it'll be done. So, and the instructions will be up before that. So that's the plan. Just as a programming note in advance, I will be in London for the first live stream of March. I am not doing it from London because I would have to stay up until midnight and do it from midnight to 1 a.m. with an 8 a.m. set of classes the next morning, for which I have to be hair, makeup, all dressed up, the whole 9 yards, and have eaten breakfast. So I know I'm not going to be able to do that. So we are going to miss that one. I am going to have Scott post the next block the night of that meeting that we would normally have it. So you will still have it in advance, and hopefully I will have had all the instructions and everything ready so that when you get it, it's ready to go. It's going to be another simple block. We'll get into more complex ones as we go through the rest of the year. So these first two will be my easiest. So I just want to let you know that even though I'm not going to be on, I am going to do my best to make sure that you have something that day so that you don't fall behind in your blocks. I see Judy saying something here. Oh, okay. So Judy's saying that's Gudrun Erla's block of the month. She has a new stripology ruler to make it flying geese. Very cool. Plus you can use Civil War fabric. Of course you can. You can make it with anything you want. I am using blues and yellows because they're stars. But you can do whatever you want. My favorite flying goose ruler is the Studio 180 Deb Tucker's wing clipper. But you use anything you want. Whenever I do instructions, by the way, if you have a favorite method for doing half square triangles, flying geese, square and square, whatever it is that you like, I'm not going to be offended. You do not have to go ahead and use my methods for anything. But I am going to show you how I'm doing it. And one of the reasons, like I said, that I picked how I'm doing the flying geese is simply because one point is the light yellow and one is the medium. And the medium stays on the same side on all 4 geese. When I've done flying geese and I haven't remembered the trick, and I don't remember it right now, so that's why I'm not teaching it to you, you get half of them with the darker on one side and half of them with the darker on the other. And if you're making a big quilt, that doesn't matter as much. But in this particular case, since it's only the one block, I didn't want to have to figure it out, to be honest with you. So that's why I'm doing it the way I am. But yeah, feel free. A lot of what we're going to be doing is going to be fairly simple in terms of technique, and you use the technique that works for you. Okay, so let me just, I was about to press this when the alarm started to go off. Alright, so let's talk half square triangles. So the method that I'm using that is going to be in the instructions for the half square triangles is to mark the diagonal on your light colored square, and then here we go. There we are. So this is what we're doing right here. So I have a diagonal. Can you see it? Oh, barely. Okay, so the diagonal runs like this. So I'm putting my fabrics right side together. My yellows are a little orangey, just so you know, but one of the reasons for that is because I'm not buying anything. I'm only using what's in my stash. So I didn't have a lot of super light plain yellows, at least not with enough material in them. Okay, normally I do leaders and enders, but because I have yellow thread in here and most of the leaders and enders I have prepared are white, I don't want to use yellow because that might show through. So I'm going to just drop my needle. I'm going to place my fabric. In my particular case, my 1/4 inch, hold on, let me move this. My 1/4 inch is halfway through this toe of this foot. So that's what I'm going to trace down this line. I'm just going to hold my threads here to make sure they don't get sucked down into the machine. Start slow, make sure I'm established. And then I'm going to finish this. Now normally I'd pop a leader and ender here or the next one of these. I don't have another one of these prepared. So when that's the situation, I kind of cheat. I will lift and then just move it over. Put my needle down and then stitch down the other side. Okay. Now I could just cut, but then I would need to get up my tweezers when I pull the thread back up, so by dragging it out, I leave those tails to hold on to. This is how I originally learned how to sew, so it was hard for me to break that habit in the first place. Okay, now that this is sewn up and down both sides, I'm going to cut right down that line. And then I'm going to come over here to the pressing table. And I'm going to press these to the dark side. So first I'm going to warm it up. And I'll warm this one. I'm going to turn my steam off. I had it on earlier today and I don't normally sew with steam. Alright. So it's been a while since I've done this, so if you're new, I'm just going to walk you through it. I'm leaving this bottom one right where it was, and I'm folding back the top page, and I'm going to use my fingers to flatten that seam out a little bit, and then I'm going to run my nail down it. And that is going to give me a nice flat seam once I press it. Now, I'm not scrubbing the ruler, not the ruler, the iron back and forth. Because you don't want to distort the seam. Okay. Now usually if I'm doing this in bulk like I would if this was for, let's say, a full quilt of these stars, I would let them cool in place. I wouldn't move them until they were cool. It helps the seam do better. So when it looks like I'm moving the iron, let me turn it this way so you can see better. I'm actually not touching the fabric. I'm just folding this over to make sure that it's going to be flat, and then I'm putting the iron down on it. So then that way I'm not distorting the seam. All right. So that's that. I now have 4 half square triangles. Now they have ears. They're a little bit oversized too. So the next thing to do would be to go ahead and trim these to the correct size. So I will do that next. Now with our seam allowances, we want these at 3.5. So I'm going to just line this up. In this particular case, what I like to do, and I don't think I can get close enough for you to see. No, I don't think I can. Okay, so for the first cut, I start by lining the right edge of my line with the right edge on the fabric until I've got it pretty close, and then I just give it that little extra scooch to put it on the middle. If you try to line it up right from the get-go, I have found that I tend to mess it up more. I am using a little table here that has reflective fabric on it, but it started to stain my white materials. And you see, now I messed this up, and I can't see it from that side, so I'm going to move it over here. It helps if the ruler is the right direction. And I can see just those little threads I need to cut, so I'm just going to come back and do that. Come on. There we go. I'm not Eleanor Burns, so I don't throw the stuff on the floor. And that's perfectly fine that that's what she does, but I have carpet instead of a hard floor. So for me, it's a lot harder to clean up. Okay, so these half square triangles are going to finish at 3.5. So I was talking with a friend of mine on the phone the other day, and she was mentioning how she watches this baker who basically does a live stream of her decorating cakes. So she'll have it on and she'll be making, let's say, 100 roses for a wedding cake or something, and she just has it rolling live so that people can watch. And my friend was suggesting that that might be something that people would like to do, is just kind of watch the whole sewing process without, you know, a big plan for everything and sharing a lot of information. And I was wondering what you guys thought. This baker does it as part of her membership. So if you pay to be a member of her, either her memberships or her Patreon, you get a special code, and you can bake along with her, basically. Like I said, I didn't know if that would be something that people would find interesting. You would get to watch me make all my mistakes. I try not to make very many on this live stream, but they do happen, and life happens. So you know, you could watch as I'm organizing the sewing room or whatever, which would not be something that would be regular YouTube type content. But it could be on for, you know, 4 hours or something, and you could come and go as you chose. So if you think that that would be something you'd be interested in, or you think other people would be, if you could let me know, I would appreciate that. And you can do that one of two ways. You can either put a comment in the comment section here, or you can email me at the email address, mail@StashBlasterQuilts.com. But I would love to know what you think. I do want to try to provide the content that people would like. So if a basically online sit and sew would be of interest, then it's something I would certainly like to consider. Right now, of course, with everything that's going on, I can't. Okay, see, now I almost made a huge mistake right there and started cutting where it was 3.5 on one side and 3 3/4 on the other. Um, so anyway, so right now I'm not planning on doing anything membership or Patreon, but at some point I'd like to, because it would be very nice if this could be something that could be more of a living. So I already do like custom quilts and things like that, but I can't show a lot of that. So I don't know. Just let me know what you think. Judy's asking a question. Let me make this bigger. What brand of iron am I using? Right now, I am using a Sunbeam. I love this color on this. Simply... Oh, I can't read what that says. Simply reliable. Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't say what the actual model is. It is a Sunbeam. I do like that it has the retractable cord here. And when you fill it with water, you fill it with this slider down. Yeah, hold it like this. But then when you push this up, the jets are right here in the front if you want to spray. So I do like that. The iron I was using before was getting really, really temperamental, and it was spitting on everything. So I stopped using that one and pulled this one out of my stash. Okay, so I took a class last year, and somebody was doing a poll basically on how many sewing machines do you have. And I was counting it up, and I knew I had quite a few. Well, now that I've had to pull them all out of the closet, if you count my two little mini ones, which aren't really sewing machines, the bobbin thread doesn't... There's no place for a bobbin, but there is a hook, so if you hold the thread, you can actually stitch with the things, but they're not really good for sewing. But if you count those, I have 13 of various types. Almost all of them don't do anything more than a straight stitch. In fact, I have 3 featherweights. I had them cleaned. I haven't touched them. They're in perfect working condition. So I'm probably going to put them up for sale. But I have an old Universal, all that stuff. So that's the sewing machines. But I also have multiple irons. I think I have, because when my mom died, I got hers, and she had 2 or 3, and I had 2 or 3, and I think I picked up another one along the way. I'm not sure how many irons I have right now. I have one downstairs and one here that I use consistently, and then I have at least 4 more that I can think of right off the top of my head. So this one happens to be a Sunbeam. If at some point, you know, some giant iron company wants to give me an iron and that I can't live without, then would I get rid of the other ones? Probably. But until then, I'm going to use what I have. Just like I'd love one of those super giant sewing machines with the 14-inch throat practically on some of them that are for embroidery, but you can use them as regular sewing too, because that would really help with quilting big quilts. But that's not gonna happen, not for a long time anyway. Oh shoot, I was gonna say something and I lost it. Oh, so the coughing. I am COVID free, but I can't get rid of this cough. A friend of mine was saying that she had it too. It took her almost 3 months to finally get rid of it. So I do apologize if I'm coughing during this, but can't really help it, so there you go. However, I will try to keep drinking, because if I'm drinking, I cough less. And then at that point, hopefully I'll be over it before I'm on the trip and everything, because there's nothing quite like the dry air of an airplane to make any cough you have worse. So there you go. Okay. Oh, and I have a new toy. Well, not really a toy, but I picked this up off the free table at my guild a couple of weeks ago, and I thought it was the cutest little thing. Except that it's all wrapped up in my cabling here. So this is going to be a little decorative thing for here on in my sewing room. I might make a dress for her or not. I don't know. I think she's actually supposed to be a pincushion, but maybe not. I'm not going to make her a pincushion though. But I've been watching a lot of historic costuming, and so it's kind of fun because I don't have a mannequin for myself, you know, to be able to make clothes. But this made me smile when I saw it, so I thought I'd share. Anywho, all right. So I have my 4 half square triangles. I am a pinner, as some of you know. So I am going to get out my box of pins here. Let's move this over. No, do not jump off my table here. All right, and let's get some height here. All right. So, looking at our pattern, right, we're going to want to put this together like so. Okay. I'm going to just push this out of the way like this. So now I'm going to pin these two together. Now since I pressed to the dark, I'm going opposite directions, right? Now, because I showed that, I'm going to double check that I'm going to pin the right side. I cannot tell you how many times I have pinned an incorrect side because I was yapping. So, okay. So I want to pin this side that's up together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to nest these seams in the corner. I'm going to check the other side, make sure that that's all nice and tight, and we're square across the top. Now, I'm not going to pin a ton. Okay, this isn't super intricate, needing tons of work. But I am going to pull out a couple of pins here and put one here. And then I'm going to go ahead and put one on this other side. Just for convenience sake. And I'm going to check it again. That is what I want, and that is what I want. So now I'm going to do this one. And in this case, the seams are still going to nest and everything. However, it's going to be going the opposite direction, which is why it's worth double checking all the time. So now, will I pick it out if it's not good enough? You betcha. However, good enough is not the same as perfect. So I'm just going to make that statement right up front. Okay, so now I have these two pieces ready to go. I'm going to put my needle down. This is actually working out pretty good today. I have not always had as good a luck with camera. Oh, so anyway, so for those of you that have been around, you know how bad January has been. And one of the things that happened was that I was in a car accident and they totaled my car. So they're giving me just under $12,000 for my Camry hybrid, which is going to cost me about $33,000. So they're basically covering about half. Because the car was a 2016, I suppose I can't argue too much, but it was in perfect condition. I always keep my cars working perfectly because it's also my work car, so my livelihood depends on it. So we went to the Camry dealership, and I said, okay, this is what I want. I want an LE. I don't want any bells and whistles on it. And I want it in blue. And they went and they looked it up, and they told me that Toyota had shipped 19 Camry hybrids for almost 150 dealerships. That becomes a bit of a problem. So I don't know if I'm going to get it or not. And so that's rather distressing. But you know what? It is what it is. Okay, now I want to show you here. In this case, oops, let me pull this up, and I would normally press this to the dark. That's my inclination. But if you look, this seam is pointing left and this seam is pointing to its left. I'm actually going to press this to the light this time, and that will make a difference in how this assembles. Okay? So I'm going to do that with both of these, and then I'll get back to you. But anyway, so I told him what I wanted, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to get it. It may just be that I am out of luck when it comes to getting the car I want. But it is not the worst thing to have ever happened to me. In fact, it's not the worst thing this year. So, alright, all I'm doing is I'm pressing those seams. Again, normally if I was sewing this for myself, since I would be doing a full quilt, I'd have a whole bunch of things that I would press all at once. It would cool on the ironing board. I have a 2x6 foot ironing board that I made for myself, so I can iron starting on the left and go all the way across, you know, the full depth and everything. And then by the time I go back to that first part, it's all ready because it's all nice and cool. Okay, Judy wrote, wash the 8 yards of flannel. 5-inch difference at one end. Whapper jawed. Okay. I've never heard of whapper jawed. That's an interesting thing. Alright, so let's take a look at these. So here are the two flying geese. Not flying geese, excuse me, half square triangles. Alright, so now I'm going to put these together. Now, by pressing to the light, they are still going to be opposite each other here. One thing you might want to consider doing, and I do this a lot, especially with newer sewers, if you're concerned about where you're going to be sewing, if you look right here, this intersection on this side is your point on the other side. And then if you go through the point here, okay, now if your pin is straight up and down once you start doing this, right, you can put a pin on either side holding down all of your seams on the other side and this side. Come on. Alright. And then when I stitch, I'm going to want to make sure that my needle goes right through that little X right there. Okay? And that should give me my perfect points. Now, I'm going to go ahead and stretch this out. I know the first pin seems silly and it's not really necessary, but I like to put it in anyway so that when I'm transporting, especially if I'm putting a bunch of stuff, carrying it up and down the stairs for ironing or whatever, I don't have to worry about it. And then when it's all laid out, I have that pin at the beginning to get me started. Okay, so So I'm going back to the sewing machine. Here. My needle's down. My foot is down. See, I'm leaving the pin in place for right now. When things get really complex, it's nice to have that so you know you started clean. Alright, and now I'm just going to stitch. Now that point I was looking for just went under. There's a little triangle here. I don't know, you probably can't see it. No, you can't. But there's a little triangle right here on my foot. Okay, and so that's, I want to make sure that that point I want to go through is right there. I'm going to keep this pin in until just before I get there, and then I'm going to pull it out. Do not sew over your pins, but you can leave them there until the last possible second. I'm going to pull that last one out early because that's fine. Okay. Again. Alright, let's move this back up. I'm going to trim those threads off. And then how did I do? That's not bad. Is it perfect? No, but it's close enough. Now, I'm going to warm the seam up, just like I did all the others. And then I'm going to spin my center. Now, we've talked about this before, but I'm going to show you again. If you press it to one side or the other, you're going to have a lot of thickness under one half. Okay? But if you gently separate the middle here, okay, you can spin this around. Basically, you're just opening up the seam right here in the middle from the cross seam. And what you will get is a very flat center. And actually, it shapes a little mini pinwheel here. It's hard to see with my fingers in the way. I will press this and then I'll show you. Okay, hopefully that's a little bit better. Hopefully you can see that. There we go. Okay. Yeah, the yellows are a little too close in color. I'm trying to get it to focus. However, this is now super flat. Now this twisted, so I'm going to iron that. I'm going to press it properly for this half. I was just trying to get the center nice and flat for you. But it means that I'm not going to have a giant lump under one half of this piece when I'm done with it. So now let me go ahead, let me press this again. Make sure I get that part that folded up on me. Now there is a trade-off. Because I pressed to the light, you can actually see some of it through the seam here. Alright? But if I'm using a white batting, that won't really be particularly noticeable. But my point's pretty good in the middle. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good. And then it is nice and flat. So that's how we're going to do the center. For doing the flying geese, you're going to take your square, I'm going to start with the light, but it doesn't matter which one you start with, and you're going to put it face down, right sides together, on top of the blue. Like I said, this is right sides together, and you want the diagonal to point to the approximate middle. It's not the middle, because when we put this one on, it's going to overlap and give us the intersection we want 1/4 of an inch down. But you're going to put it like this. Then you're going to stitch on the line this time. You're not going to stitch the 1/4 inch away like we did with the half square triangles. So let me show you that. And I know for a lot of you this is all repeat stuff, but I'm hoping that there will be some new sewers that watch this occasionally, and they can learn something. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead. Now I start at the middle and work my way to the point. It tends to lie flatter that way and do what you want it to. Okay, so I'm stitching. And again, normally I would do the next one and the next one and the next one because there's 4 of them. But I'm going to stop here. Now, at this point, you would normally cut this off, fold this back, and press it. Okay? But if you cut this off, now you have 2 loose triangles hanging around. And I'm not a super fan of that because the diagonal is going to be super stretchy. And so in order to not have to fight the bias in that particular case, because that's what the diagonal is called, is the bias, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to sew approximately a ½ inch away on the loose corner end, okay? Not the middle, towards this loose corner. You can always double check by folding this back and making sure you're sewing the correct side. Have I done it the wrong way before? Of course I have. But we don't want that to happen to you. So I'm going to stitch here. And I'm going to clip all my ends. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just cut. Oops, here we go. I'm going to cut between the 2 lines I just sewed. Okay, you can see them there. Now, is this a perfect 1/4 inch? No. Does it matter? No, because I've got enough there and my seam line is in the correct place. So now I have an extra ½ square triangle already pre-made for another project. Or it's possible, and I don't know this for sure, so don't quote me on it, it is possible that we'll use this later. If nothing else, you might decide to use it in a label or in a border or something along those lines. So this is already done. It can get pressed. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this over and I'm going to press this flat. So warm it up. Give it a press. I'm going to do the same thing, going the opposite direction, here we are, with the darker material. This is the medium yellow. Okay. Now I told you it was going to overlap in the middle, so there it is right there. Okay. And that's exactly what we want. I didn't drop the needle. That's why it's doing that weird thing. Okay. Going to line it up. And I'm going to stitch. Now, I didn't hold my thread that time, and it started zooming back into the machine. So hopefully I had enough out that it wasn't a problem, but we'll find out in just a minute. And yes, no matter how many years you've been sewing, you can mess this stuff up. Now, I love to make flying geese. I do it either with this method or the 5 square method. And I keep them actually in a drawer next to me, because this is something I can make when I'm not really ready to work on a project that needs a lot of thought. And you can always trim them down. So you can always have them a smaller size for whatever other project you want to work on later. So I have a whole drawer full of 4 patches, one full of, actually 2 full of ½ square triangles, 1 full of flying geese, etc. Now there are some that I have, like square to square, that cannot be trimmed down. So those would have to be used in that size. So it's a little less useful. Okay, so I did the same thing where I sewed the 2 seams here. I'm going to cut it approximately in between. Now, could you draw that second line? Sure. Nothing wrong with that. Right, so this is what this looks like now. And now I'm going to press this. And there's our flying goose with the 2 different yellows. Now I realize they look very similar here on this camera, and they are fairly close together, I will be honest with you there. But these are the 2 different ones. So I'll be making 4 of these. So those are the 2 pieced parts of the block. So I've just showed you how to do the flying goose, which is right here, and the half square triangle center. Okay, so next time all we're going to do is assemble the 9 patch, the 4 corners, the 4 flying geese, and then the flying geese to the center, and then put them all together. So that's it for today in terms of this month's block of the month. And then like I said, the next one will be the first Wednesday of next month. We'll sew this whole thing together next time, and then in March there'll be a new block, which like I said, I will have my husband post if possible the night the live stream would have been on. If you haven't found it, if you go to StashBlasterQuilts.com, there is an annual quilts tab. When you click on that, you can see last year's mystery quilt 2023 and this year 2024 as things are getting posted. So first there was the questionnaire that some of you answered, and then there's the fabric requirements, and then as each block gets revealed, then that'll get put up there as well. So I hope you had a good time tonight. If this is your first time and you made it all the way through, congratulations, and I hope to see you again. Please like, subscribe, hit the bell, do all of that kind of stuff. That really helps helps the algorithm actually offer this to people who don't know me, and so it kind of gives me more exposure that way. I do know a bunch of you are friends of mine from various quilting things, but not all of you, so that feels pretty good too. But yes, hopefully we can grow this. Thank you so much, Pat and Judy, for putting things into the chat. I do love to get questions there, or to go on at that point. So I do want to respect your time. If you want to send an email, it's mail@StashBlasterQuilts.com. You can put things in the comments. And thank you so much. I will see you in 2 weeks, 7 o'clock here. All right? Have a good night. Bye-bye.